the blood eagle. The most infamous Viking execution method. And yes, it was real. Here's what happened. The victim was placed face down. Ribs were cut from the spine with an axe. The rib cage was pulled apart. The lungs were removed and spread across the back like wings, all while the victim was still alive. The sagas describe this as an offering to Odin, pain as worship. The victim had to stay silent during the execution. Any screaming meant dishonor for them and their family. 9th century sources record at least 4 confirmed blood eagle executions. King Ella of Northumbria, Halfdan, son of King Harold, Archbishop Elfia, each one a high-value target. This wasn't common punishment. This was reserved for enemies who deserved legendary suffering. But here's what makes it worse. Archaeological evidence from Repton shows execution methods matching blood eagle descriptions. Rib fractures from behind, spinal cuts, lung removal trauma. The physical evidence confirms what the sagas claimed. Vikings didn't just kill their enemies. They turned executions into religious theater. Holmung duels, legal dueling. But this wasn't honor-bound combat. This was state-sanctioned murder. The rules were simple. Any man could challenge another to holmgang. Over property, over insults, over a woman. If you refused the challenge, you lost everything. Your land, your honor, your rights as a free man. The duel happened on a cloak or animal hide staked into the ground. 3 shields per fighter. Once your shields broke, you fought with bare steel. First blood usually ended it, but not always. Egil's saga documents dozens of holmgang duels. Some ended in death, some ended in permanent disability. The loser's family had no legal recourse. The duel was the law. But here's the dark part. Wealthy Vikings hired professional duel fighters, berserkers, men who fought in trance states. They'd challenge weaker men for their property, win the duel, take the land. Completely legal. Iceland banned holmgang in 1006. Not because it was brutal, because it became a legal loophole for theft through violence. The system was being exploited, so they replaced it with something worse, trial by ordeal. Uppsala, the religious center of Viking Norway and Sweden, and the site of the most systematic human sacrifice in Norse history. Every 9 years, Uppsala held a festival. 9 days long, 9 sacrifices per day. Humans and animals hung from trees in the sacred grove, 81 bodies swaying in the wind by the end. Adam of Bremen documented this in 1070. He described the grove as so thick with hanging corpses that the trees themselves seemed to bleed. The bodies stayed there until they rotted. Months, sometimes years. The victims weren't criminals. They were slaves, prisoners of war, and volunteers. Yes, volunteers. Some Norse believers chose sacrifice to guarantee entry into Valhalla. They died willingly for religious glory. Archaeological excavations at Gamla Uppsala confirm the practice. Bone deposits show blunt force trauma and strangulation. Ritual killing methods. The victims were drugged first with henbane, made compliant, then executed and hung as offerings to Odin, Thor, and Freyr. Christian missionaries called Uppsala the throat of Satan. They weren't exaggerating. The sacrifice continued until 1090, when Sweden officially converted to Christianity. But evidence suggests secret sacrifices continued decades after. Blot, seasonal sacrifice festivals held throughout the Viking world, not just at Uppsala, everywhere. 3 times per year, Winterblot in October, Midwinter Blot in January, Summer Blot in April. Each festival demanded blood, animal blood usually, human blood when times were desperate. The ritual was specific. The victim's blood was collected in a bowl. A bundle of twigs was dipped in the blood. Then the blood was splattered on temple walls, on altar stones, on the gathered crowd. Everyone got marked, everyone participated. Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla describes King Haakon forced to participate in Blot to prove his loyalty. He was Christian, but had to drink the sacrifice blood and eat horse meat to keep his throne. Religious law trumped personal belief. But Blot wasn't just about gods. It was about community enforcement. If you refused to participate, you were outlawed, exiled. Your property was seized. Your family was shamed. The ritual forced compliance through social pressure. Archaeological sites across Scandinavia show Blot evidence. Ritual pits filled with animal bones. Some pits contain human remains, children included. Carbon dating places these sacrifices throughout the entire Viking Age. This wasn't rare. This was routine. Funeral sacrifice. When a great Viking chieftain died, he didn't go to the afterlife alone. He took his slaves with him. Ibn Fadlan witnessed this in 922 on the Volga River. A Rus chieftain had died. His slave girl was chosen to accompany him. She wasn't asked, she was told. For 10 days, she was treated like royalty, given fine clothes, honored at feasts, fed alcohol and drugs constantly. They kept her compliant, kept her willing. On the day of the funeral, she was led to the ship's burial. She was given more drugs, henbane, enough to cause hallucinations. She described seeing her dead master in paradise waiting for her. Then 6 men raped her, one by one, while the funeral crowd watched. This was part of the ritual. After the rape, an old woman called the Angel of Death strangled her with a cord. While she was being strangled, 2 men stabbed her repeatedly in the ribs. The body was placed next to the chieftain. The ship was set on fire. Master and slave burned together. Ibn Fadlan's account was dismissed as propaganda for centuries, but archaeological evidence proves him right. Scandinavian boat burials contain female skeletons, showing strangulation, trauma, and stab wounds. The pattern repeats across dozens of sites. This wasn't one isolated incident. This was standard funeral practice for high-status Vikings. Blood feuds and revenge killings. Vikings didn't have police. They had blood feuds, and the law protected them. If someone killed your family member, you had a legal right to revenge, not just against the killer, against his entire family, sons, brothers, cousins. The feud could last generations. The sagas are filled with these cycles. Njal's saga documents a single dispute that resulted in 50 deaths over 30 years. The original insult? A man was called beardless. That insult started a body count that wiped out entire bloodlines. Viking law had a concept called wergild, blood money. You could pay compensation instead of being killed. The price for a man's life was set by his social status. A jarl cost more than a farmer. A slave cost almost nothing. But here's the catch. If the victim's family rejected the payment, the feud continued legally, and most families rejected it. Accepting money instead of blood was considered cowardly. Honor demanded violence. The feuds had rules. You couldn't kill at night. That was murder. You had to announce your kills publicly. That was honorable. If you killed someone and didn't claim it, you became an outlaw, worse than a murderer. Iceland's entire legal system was built around managing blood feuds. The Althing met every summer to arbitrate disputes, but arbitration only worked if both sides agreed. Most didn't. The violence continued until one family was extinct. The blood pit punishment. The worst Viking punishment wasn't execution. It was the blood pit, burial alive, but designed for maximum suffering. Viking law was clear. If a slave killed their master, the punishment was the pit. A hole dug exactly 6 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Too narrow to lie down, too shallow to stand upright. The victim was thrown in alive. Their legs were broken first, so they couldn't climb out. Their arms were broken next, so they couldn't harm themselves or speed up death. Then the pit was partially filled with rocks, just enough to pin them in place. They died over days, sometimes weeks, from thirst, from exposure, from their own broken bones piercing internal organs. The pit was shallow enough for air, deep enough to prevent escape. Engineered suffering. Recent excavations outside Dublin found exactly these pits. Stone-lined holes with the exact dimensions described in law codes. The skeletons inside show the predicted trauma. Broken legs, broken arms, extended decomposition periods. Soil analysis proves these victims died slowly. Chemical markers show they lived for days after burial. The pits were placed in public areas. Other slaves watched. Other captives learned what happened if you resisted. This wasn't a rare punishment. This was standard enforcement. Archaeological surveys show these pits at every major Viking settlement. The infrastructure of terror was everywhere. These weren't myths. These weren't exaggerations. These were documented traditions that defined Viking culture for 3 centuries. The sagas glorified them. The law protected them. The entire society was built around normalized brutality that would be considered war crimes today. And every single one of these practices was considered completely normal in Norse society. If you want more content, like this video and subscribe to the channel.